Today I've got the YesWelder 205 on the bench, and this could be the perfect TIG welder for you to start with for around 200 bucks. What's going on, everyone? Today I've got another YesWelder here on the bench, and this is the 205P Pro from YesWelder. Now, this is what appears to be a fantastic starter TIG welder, or a TIG welder for just about all of your RC needs. If you're like me and you're a hobbyist and you just kind of want to build trucks and chassis and bumpers and frames for the RC world in your garage or wherever, this could be a fantastic option. When I first started, having a TIG welder with these type of options would have cost me many times more than what this is available for. Currently, this is listed at $239 on the website, but I do have a 10% off coupon for you, which is just Harley Designs, if in the end, this looks like something that may be a good fit for you. So we're gonna unbox this, and then we're gonna get it set up out in the garage, and we're gonna start doing a little bit of welding. I do plan to use this welder to build another one of my tube chassis builds, the Jimmy's Moonbuggy chassis back there. We're gonna go through and build the entire build-along program with this unit. Tonight, we're gonna open this up, go through everything, and we are going to stick some tubes together, but the full build along will come in a later long form video. Here is the basic unit, and as you can tell, it's nice and compact. Not gonna take up a ton of room in your workshop in case that's at a premium. Why can these never be satisfying on these welders? We've got a nice large digital screen on the front side here. It's gonna have our push button and our rotary for control, which we'll get into that, and we'll get up to my basic settings that I use, at least what we're gonna start with. And then we've got the rest of our connections down here below. On the back, we've got our pigtail with a 220 plug, but this machine is capable of running on 110, and it does come with that adapter. We've got the lead for arc welding. Not something I ever do, but if you need a tool that'll do it all, that might be handy to keep around. We've got our manual. We've got the gas hose that will go from the backside of the welder to the regulator on your argon bottle. We've got the ground clamp. We've got that 220 to 110 adapter, which is very important. And lastly, we've got the torch. Now, let's check this torch. So this torch is the WP17 size. I believe that's the same size as the main TIG that I have ran for the last couple of years. So nice to see that. I do have a number of accessories for that size torch, so that'll be handy to have. Inside of that resealable bag, we do have our basic set of collets and ceramic cups, as well as two of the rear caps. You know, we've got the long version to run a long tungsten, or a stubby one in case you need some extra clearance. I do like running a stubby rear cap just to be able to get inside of the tight tube cages that I'm often working on. Now, this does not come with any tungsten, so you will need to pick up that. There's not a lot else to cover on this until we take it out to the shop. So I'm gonna do that. I went and picked up a new welding cart because I've got the new 205 here, and we had the 200 DC that we got from YesWelder earlier in the week. So I needed a place to put them, get them off of my bench at the moment. So I'm gonna go get that assembled, and we're gonna dive into getting these set up and starting to burn some tubes. Got the new welder set up on the new cart next to the other YesWelder that we got the other day, but all hooked up. One thing to note is that this does use a screw-on style connection for the TIG torch versus like a DINS connector like this one here. Not a big deal because it comes with everything you need, but if in the future you're thinking about changing out torches, you will want to look at the setup. I do have it hooked up to the argon bottle. I actually was out of argon, had to go get a new one. So that's hooked up. It does not include an argon bottle or a regulator. Regulators are available from YesWelder. That's what this one is. Nice setup. It's got the threaded connections all around, so no barb style that you have to use a push hose on and a hose clamp. Small things like that are nice to see. But from here, we can turn it on. Now, I have powered this up once already, so these are not default settings. A little bit of a delay between kick on and fire up, but I am hooked up to 110 volt since I'm doing pretty low amperage, not something I normally have an issue with. The three modes, stick, high frequency TIG, and pulse TIG. Well, today we'll be using both high frequency TIG and pulse. Since we're not using a foot pedal, although this is compatible with one if you want to pick it up separately, which I do have, maybe we'll try that out as well, or maybe that'll be in a later video. But anyway, the nice thing about high frequency versus lift TIG is that it's just when you hold the tungsten off of the material, you hit the button and it starts. That's a nice thing to have, and something that I do like that this welder has for this money. Now, all of the options are here. We've got the I don't know what you want, firing mode, whatever you want to call it. 2T, 4T, and spot. 2T means when you push the button, you weld, and when you release, it turns off. 4T means you press the button and let go to start it, you press it again and let go to stop it. And then spot. I'm not sure if that's like the cold TIG on the 200 DC, but maybe we'll find that out. Beyond that, this is how we're going to navigate our options, and this is how you go between them. It's got a right button on the left side and a left button on the right side, which is interesting, but you know, we start post flow gas. I've got it set at 2 seconds. We can turn that down to 1.5. Start amperage, it only goes down to 10. This one goes down to 5. 10 is not a bad thing, but that's as low as it goes. Slope up time, that is the time that it takes to go from your start amperage to your peak amperage. When using a pedal, this doesn't matter, but in this case, I think you saw that I had it set at 1 second, which is that's a long time, I guess, but you know, if you're new to TIG, that might be a good starting point. I've got it set at 25 peak amps. Now, I'm looking at this for 3/16 DOM tubing. So just using a button and no pedal, 25 is pretty high. You know, 35 is where I keep it if I'm running a pedal, and I can kind of find where I want to be with the pedal during the whole process. You know, 25 is good if you're not using a pedal, but you could even go lower. You could probably go to 20 and be just fine. Slope down, I've got at 1/2 second, and then my stop amperage, I've got as low it'll go again at 10. And then we have post flow gas. I have it set at 4 seconds. We'll see, you know, if you're getting your welds really hot, you may want that post flow a little bit higher, but you can just kind of feel out how things are going. Beyond that, we've got the ground clamp, which is actually the positive side when you're TIG welding. That's set up here. And this is the trigger that goes into this, which is the sleeve that runs all the way up to your torch, and then the torch side. Like I said, we will try pulse a little bit later. Pulse is nice, and for tubing without a pedal, it actually may be the way that we end up wanting to go. So that's definitely something that we'll play around with here. I've disassembled the torch head, but this again is a WP17. Now, that is referring to the size and amperage capabilities and all of that. But I want to kind of show you how this thing comes and talk about that a little bit. So inside, you've got a couple of pieces. This part here is going to go in the nose of your torch. Thread it in first. Now, you can get shorter pieces for this, like the gas lens style, which looks like a little screen in the front, and that can help shorten this up a little bit. This collet here is sized to your tungsten. Now, this doesn't come with tungsten, so you'll need to grab a pack of tungsten. I typically use the 2% thoriated. A lot of times they'll consider it by color, so that's how you'll commonly see it. I also use the CK Worldwide green. I can't tell a huge difference. I'm sure that more qualified people could probably tell me a little bit better, but this has been my most common. Now, I've ground my tungsten already. I use a tungsten grinder sometimes. I haven't had that for very long though, so normally I just did it with a grinder or a bench grinder, things like that. There's proper ways to grind your tungsten, probably good videos to watch, proper direction to grind them and all. Again, I've learned all the things that I know only from YouTube, but I'm using 1/16 diameter tungsten. So I've got the collet that is properly sized to it. You'll see that on the back side there, 1/16. Now, the torch comes with a stubby back and then a very long back. I had a, you know, mid-ground version there, and that's what I decided to install. These things are cheap. Just trying to get the length of this torch shortened up a little bit. I could have gone all the way to the stubby. The tungsten that I grabbed was a little bit shorter than full size, and I didn't feel like cutting it down further. So I'm installing the number 6 cup. This comes with a 4, 5, and 6. What that number refers to is the size of the opening, and that number I believe actually refers to the size of the opening in 1/16 of an inch. So this should be 6/16 or 3/8 of an inch, and that's what we have. Very close. So gives you a little bit of an idea on how that is done. I'm just running the larger one. It's, you know, nice to have the gas coverage, so that's what I'm running. You can get all the fancy cups and accessories for your torches. They're pretty, I wouldn't say universal. You just need to make sure you buy them for the size of the torch that you have, which is that WP17. Once you stick your tungsten in there, you tighten up the back side, and that's what tightens the collet down to make sure that tungsten stick out maybe a little far. Maybe I'll back that in just a hair. So we're gonna start with a couple pieces of tubing that I've already notched. Just quick job in there. I'm just gonna butt these up so that the notch lines up. That's in place there. Now we're gonna be using silicon bronze for our filler. This is 1/32, I believe. So pretty thin. 1/16 is more common. I use that a lot as well, but this is what I've got handy for the moment. I've got the machine set at 20 amps currently, and we're gonna fire through one of these joints. So that's a pretty clean joint for one side. We've got, you know, decent coverage around the whole front side without having a really clear look at this, you know, or having it in a jig or anything like that. I'm only able to get so much visibility on it. So torch fires up nicely, sounds pretty clean. My gas flow is around 20 CFH, I believe, on my regulator. Let's flip this over and do the other side. You can see our heat affected zone just by looking at everything. It's not too bad. It's, you know, you get some heat in and around these things often. Without having anything on this side, you can't necessarily see where it would have ended, but you can see it's not growing way out past the tube. So we've got our amperage in a pretty good spot, I think. So 20 amps is probably worth looking at or worth starting out at. Let's do this side on the same settings that we just did, and then we'll do our next one using the pulse function. Put more heat in at that time than I really wanted to. I wouldn't be too mad at that joint, you know. So what I'm gonna do real quick is get this cooled off, and I'm just gonna hit it with a wire brush, clean it up. We'll take a close look at it before we switch over to pulse. So after just hitting it with a wire brush, you can see a little bit extra on that top side there. The other side, pretty decent. That would flow just fine. If you wanted to clean it up a hair bit more, absolutely could if you wanted something that was even smoother, but for something that you're just knocking out on the bench quickly, see a little bit of, we did not get all the way around that joint. That would definitely be something you would want to ideally do, but not the end of the world. That side flowed around about perfectly. Not too much buildup. Good enough for tubes that are, you know, very, very small in comparison to much larger work pieces. So now let's switch over to pulse. So sitting there on pulse, I get amperage super high. So we're gonna put our amperage at a little bit higher than we were. We were at 20. So now we're gonna go to 25. We're gonna go into, this is our base, or the low amp. So basically what pulse does is it fluctuates between your peak amperage and then a second amperage value. We're gonna set ours at the lowest possible, which is 10. And then how long the pulse is, or how many times it happens per second, is this value. So 60 hertz is 60 times a second. We can go down to like 3 times per second, which is still, you know, you're gonna hear it. And then duty cycle, we'll leave it at 50%. So that should put less heat in our tube, but allow us to get a little bit more amperage during the peak. So I've ran pulses as low as like, you know, half a second, but this is gonna be, you know, 3 per second. So let's see how this goes and see if we notice a huge difference on tubing. That side flowed even nicer than the first side. So flip it over, do the other one, and compare our final results. So our top joint there is going to be the one that we just did. Without using a pedal, the pulse is definitely nice to have. It's noticeably easier, and something that I would definitely continue using if I'm not going to decide to use a pedal. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to get this cleaned up, cooled down, and we'll take a final look at it. Okay, so we're looking at the top joint here as far as the pulse goes. Same situation. We needed to get a little bit more filler around that corner. You can see that tiny hole. Now, that little hole there is like the size of a ballpoint pen. If you're not truly worried, paint will definitely cover that sin. On this side, again, same thing. A little bit of a gap there in our filler. I should have worked that heat around the corner a little bit more. It's super easy to do. I find that it's more difficult when you're working flat on this surface rather than like with the tubes in a jig or up off of the work surface a little bit. So that's more just how I've got my material prepped and sitting here. Getting around really small items in general is a bit of a struggle with a TIG, but overall, the pulse style, definitely the cleaner way, the easier way to flow things on this machine, and that's the way that I would continue to suggest to you if you're doing this work. Inserting this in the video here, this head is a flex head, so you can kind of like bend it how you want. But more important than that, you can rotate this in relation to this button. When the button is on top, it's hard to hold the torch right where you want. My natural way is to hold the TIG torch like this, and this button is an awkward position if it's in top, but if you rotate it a little bit, it puts it in a much more natural position for me. So rotate this head in relation to that button and find that like perfect position where you can rest your hand on something and work your tungsten back and forth right off the top of the material. Huge difference once I just got those little ergonomics worked out. The torch is a little bulky in comparison to some of the torches that I'm using, but once I did this, it didn't really take away nearly as much as when I was first trying to use it in this awkward position. Another type of part I'm commonly doing is some laser cut plate. This is around 100 thou thick, and we're gonna crank up our amperage to closer to like, I'm gonna say 50. I'm gonna leave it in the pulse setting right now. I'm just gonna bring it up to 50. I'm gonna use the 1/16 silicon bronze rather than the 1/32 that we have been using. So a little bit larger, flow a little bit more in there, but got the two pieces set up on a block of aluminum, propped up for height with a magnet. So I'm just gonna tack on each side to hold in position, and then we'll go through and we'll fill in, see how it works. Got that welded in there. This is absolutely going to do perfectly fine for the purposes of something that we're doing here in RC. So that would work just fine. I'd be super happy with that. The pulse worked great. Obviously it takes away that thought process of having to use a pedal and, you know, bring in and out your amperage based on how you want, but just relies on you setting up your machine a little bit more, which you'll learn through trial and error. So wrapping up, for the money, it seems like a great machine. I have never had a welder that was this inexpensive but did the things that it's doing, and I really like that. So it's really hard to argue with. YesWelder did send this to me. I do have a 10% off coupon that you guys can use. It's just Harley Designs, and there's a link that is an affiliate link that if you want to go buy it, it supports the channel. But I don't want to have that take away from this video and make it seem disingenuous. More than anything, I'm just trying to find an option like this that is an inexpensive welder that any of you guys who wanted to do like the buggy build along would feel comfortable with without spending, you know, $2,000, $1,500, things like that. You can get into this so much cheaper. The welder, then you will need to buy an argon bottle, and you know, you can start with a small size and work your way up, just upgrade as you refill down the road. And you need a regulator. Regulators are fairly inexpensive, but beyond that, you'll need a pack of tungsten, and then everything else comes in the kit. I don't think that I left anything out on that side, and it would get you going down the road and having a lot of fun learning how to TIG. But that should just about wrap it up for the first video on this 200P Pro. You can get this thing through a number of locations. You don't have to use the affiliate link. You can use Amazon if you want. They're listed on there also. But like I said, if you want to use the link, great. If not, and you want to look at the buggy build along files, highly recommend that. If you're interested in building a tube chassis for RC, I think that I've made it as easy as possible for you. I'm super stoked with how this thing worked out. It's a lot of fun, and it's exciting to see that you can get so much for so little. So if that means anything to you, I hope that it was helpful. Otherwise, if you like the video in general, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already, hit the notification bell to see videos as soon as they get uploaded. I also have channel memberships in case you want to support the channel more in that way. On that side of things, it's normally just like behind the scenes stuff, talking. I don't like, there's not like additional how-to stuff. It's mainly just like supporting the channel, what's going on, some little more in-depth insight into little things that are happening. So with that, as always, thanks again for watching. We'll see you on the next one.